So, a practice that I've had since I was a teenager is journaling. And that's not an everyday thing, but it's really quite frequent. Most years. Some years not, but most of the time that's a piece of it. And it is a place where I reflect on what's happening in my life. Sometimes it's venting, sometimes it's prayer, sometimes it's following a process called inner bonding that I teach seminarians periodically, which involves a dialogue between different parts of the self and God. So got all these voices in our head anyway, but loving adult, kind of this false autopilot self that takes a lot of different forms, the inner child part that kind of carries our creativity and our more essence, and then God. So I use that, and the Artist's Way has also informed my journaling periodically, and I've led different Artist's Way groups, so that also is a spiritual practice in itself, but the journaling is a component of that. Another practice that is essential in my life is meeting with people in a consistent way to share our spiritual journey. So this past weekend I was with some women that I've been planning and going on retreats with for the last 30 years. So we really do know each other's territory and some of the evolution of our spiritual lives, as well as the sort of broader context of our experiences and what's moving in us. And I also do spiritual direction, and I've been in direction since probably 95. Mostly with the same director, part of that with group spiritual direction. I go on a spiritual direction retreat every June, which gives me an opportunity to really think and pray with God about the past year and what I sense moving in terms of new directions for the coming year. A lot of that is about my actual work here, my ministry, my sense of call here, so it's very formative for me. The mystic that I'm most interested in at the moment is Ignatius Loyola. And one of our spiritual directors actually gave me a book on this when I attended a retreat that she was running somewhere. And it's by Jim Manny. It's a really nice short book. So we're using that with a small group from my church. Tuesday evenings we meet in my home, and we're using that book to focus on the examen, the practice of Ignatius Loyola. What I really like about it is just knowing a little bit about this guy. In the 1500s, he was like a conquistador kind of guy. He was very interested in battles and conquest with women. He got his knee blown off by a cannonball, so he had to go back to his family's castle in Spain to convalesce. And there he had only 2 books available to him. One of them was The Life of Christ, and the other was The Life of the Saints. This was not material that interested him, but he read it anyway because he had to. And as things went, he found that his mood after reading those things and thinking about the life of Christ and the mystics was quite different and more upbeat than his mood when he thought about what he wanted to return to in terms of battle and women. And he kept noticing this sort of day after day, paid attention to that, and realized that our feelings can really be informative of God's intent in our lives and what actually does give us joy. So the practice of noticing what gives me consolation, meaning joy, increased sense of love, creativity, delight, and desolation, which is feelings of whatever, helplessness, anger, frustration, sadness, confusion, in the day or in the week, is a part of a rhythm that I really enjoy now. And there are other pieces of the examen that are very valuable too, that I incorporate as well.
So, would you share your wish for students as they incorporate spirituality into their daily lives?
Well, you know, many students have come here because of their experience of God in their lives in some way. And then they lose a bit of track of that while they're here and their theology is evolving and they're defending points of view and precepts and learning to look at Scripture through a new lens and so on. And that often leads to stress, it leads to depression, it leads to confusion. It may be what actually brings some students in here, even though there are other things that are part of that. And then there are other students who came here in hopes of developing a relationship with God in some way or another. And so my hope is that students really take that longing and that restlessness for God very seriously and avail themselves of all the opportunities within their curriculum and outside. And that could mean spiritual direction individually or in groups. It could mean being part of an Artist's Way group. For many students, creativity is a component that they've set aside, and their guitar is under their bed. And that aspect, which actually may put them in touch with God, needs to be reactivated for a sense of wholeness and balance for many of our students. This is a great time to take advantage of counseling and spiritual direction and retreats as they're offered in different classes or perhaps outside the curriculum. Because formation isn't something that's just for now. It's kind of lifelong habits and practices and a sense of hopefulness that, wow, I can help people when I'm out there in ministry in whatever way form themselves and find this relationship with God, and I can sustain it enough to be confident about that and look forward to that in my roles ahead.